I feel like I walk around, I see like every day, like 12 guys who look like exactly like me.
Yeah, I got roasted for this on the NFL like stream that we do on Twitch. Where Tyler Ricky Tynes of the Ringer, terrific writer. I like changed into a shirt because I'm like expected to wear like a shirt with a collar on it, and he was like, you look like you should be reading ads on a NPR program. You look like Ira Glass," and I was like, "All right, cool, let's roll." But I can't argue with him. Like I look like I'm trying to look like Ira Glass, and I don't even know that I'm not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I go through the same thing. Believe me. I mean, even with my family members, they confuse me with Ira Glass.
Yeah.
All right, let's go into this.
Okay.
Enough of this, David.
Enough about my looks.
You have, I don't know if you spent the last 4 years doing this, but you certainly have spent the last couple that I've been aware of, really examining the sort of cultural aspects of what is going on with the conservative movement in this country, if you could say that on some level, and sort of the lunacy that has been happening. Give me your sense of like what, I don't know, what is it? What are you been following impeachment?
A little bit. I haven't been watching it. I find that I can't really pay attention to it closely. Like it's sort of, I don't know if that's my mind going or if it's my mind like improving and developing, but either way, it's kind of just like, I don't know, the third through fifth innings of an August baseball game to me. It's the same energy level for that. I have, enjoyed the highlights, which I guess is like the president's attorneys getting up there and doing Lionel Hutz things. But there hasn't been, I feel like in a lot of ways, like everybody else, like I sort of know what I'm seeing and what I'm going to expect from it. And if I thought that there was, I mean, not even just a legal argument to make on Trump's behalf, if I thought that they would bother making such an argument, I think I would be more curious to see it. But it's all at this point, like there's three moves, that sort of political and intellectual movement makes, which are like feints, taunts, and then like attempts to sort of like get in people's asses and sort of put them off like strategically. And there's nothing new with that, and I don't need to see it with that like senatorial energy level that helps you.
But do you think that there is, I mean, there's no qualitative difference. But do you think that we're moving further? Like when you write about like American kookery, right? I mean, it feels like to me, and maybe part of it is Facebook. I mean, you wrote a piece about Steve Carlton and sort of comparing him to Kurt.
Yeah, it's wildly unfair to Steve Carlton, who, for one thing, was really good at his job.
I mean, look, it's difficult for me because I grew up with the Red Sox not winning anything. And then, Kurt Schilling was an integral part to that first time they won the series. And it's difficult to look back on that now. But
it's weird. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame on his merits. It's an incredible testament to his particular brain damage. And then also, I think this is what I was trying to do in the piece, like the general drift of like what it means to be a conservative person. Cause like in 2001, he was a McCain sounding guy that like after like September 11th, Schilling wrote an open letter to the country that was like, boy, did they pick the wrong country, but we're so honored to be out there standing up for you. And especially the first responders, like it's paint by numbers. Right. And now the guy like compulsively has posted himself out of the Hall of Fame, like out of something that he deserves on its merits because he can't stop doing tweets.
But I guess that's my point is that you're seeing this progression, like qualitatively it's changed, but it's also sort of like quantitatively. I don't if there's some type of like quality, like it is become. I mean, I was describing this with Ben just a moment ago that it used to be like there was the right would try and infect the mainstream by, going through Fox, going through Drudge, and then getting it into the mainstream news. But now you have two parallel narratives that seem to be able to coexist without necessarily having them, intersect. And when they do, it's just for conflict purposes. And on top of which, It's starting to feel like maybe it's a concentric circle. Like I'm looking around and it's not just there's a mass insanity that seems to be taking hold in this country that is both conservative and like, all the Q stuff, which I think is sort of like conservative adjacent or something.
Yeah, it's another way to sort of like, the Q thing to me is like, it's both complicated and it's not, because it's like, in some ways, it's the logical endpoint of like some really sort of thoughtless rhetoric that we've been dealing with over the course of, I mean, not just 20 years, but I think a lot of this is like post September 11th, that was like a deranging moment for our politics and the culture, like for obvious reasons. Like it was extremely upsetting, like it's not the sort of thing that you could say like is being overreacted to. It's just that like the vulnerability that was exposed to that. And then I think also these sorts of levels of complicity, and then watching all of these different sorts of public failures, that like, that doesn't, it's impossible to deny. And yet the narrative that, America is, the beacon of democracy and the essential country and all of the whatever other rhetoric there is, that sort of just continues on apace. And so like, as you watch those two things drift apart, it's natural to want to try to sort of square that circle. And then if you are immersed in conservative media, like, which I think, it's not like you can say that Rush Limbaugh was like underground or whatever, but like, I don't listen to him. I don't really know what he's saying unless like somebody clips something really bad and puts it online. But if you spend 20 years or 30 years painting the objectively milquetoast political opposition in the country as like sort of a fifth column, and as like the tools of elites and all of this other sorts of language, that I don't know how thoughtful any of that was. I don't think that anybody really considered what it would be like to just have that hydrant blasting 24/7 for a couple of decades. But at some point, people are going to start to believe it. And where you wind up then is in a space where I think that like Democrats have a romantic idea of what, not all, but many have a romantic idea of what the Republican Party is or could be, that like we disagree on a lot of stuff, but we're friends and we all want the right thing. Right. And I think that increasingly that's not the case from the other side of the aisle. Not just, if it was originally a rhetorical thing, if it was originally like trying to steepen, the importance of a choice that, really wasn't that important to begin with, or to sort of heighten a contradiction that wasn't there. Like once that's out of play, then you're basically just saying the things that get the best response. And I feel like that's kind of where we are now with a lot of this stuff, that like even the people that, I'm trying to think of like James Lankford from Oklahoma, like apparently was like tearing up during the, the videos showing like Eugene Goodman saving Mitt Romney's life or whatever, or like just even seeing how bad that really was. And like, I think that's a real response. I just think that like fundamentally, that's not a circuit that he's capable of closing. Like, not just because he's afraid to keep his job and he knows that like, if he votes against Trump, that a lot of people who care more about Trump than him would be mad. But I think that like, it's just that like the politics itself doesn't work anymore, that like nobody can really make a choice other than the one that the rest of their party is making. And so that vacuum where there should be politics happening is being filled with bullshit.
I just saw a poll that showed like that compared Democrats' perspective on Republicans and Republicans on Democrats. Do you consider them a political rival or an enemy?
Enemy, yeah, I saw that, which is...
It was like 75% of Republicans view Democrats as the enemy. And it's the opposite with Democrats. Like something, I don't remember the specific breakdown, but that was the dynamic.
It was a striking thing. And I remember being struck by the word enemy on it too, because I think some of it is like just how people like to respond to polls, that's just like the way that conservative politics talks right now, is this like incredibly strident, kind of overstated, like Trump scented way of doing it, where it's like, if Biden wins, you won't have a country anymore, whatever. Like when Trump says that, what he's doing is like playing this game of telephone where like that's his memory of what the last thing Lou Dobbs said to him was. Right. And like, it doesn't necessarily make any sense, but he's not thinking about it. He's not thinking about what that would mean. And yet like where that gets taken seriously, like when people hear that and they're like, oh my God, like we're going to fucking lose our country for real. Like that can happen. Like at some point, like you can't blame them for believing what the president is saying. You can actually, I would personally blame them, but you can't like, you're supposed to be more careful with the words that you use so that people don't start thinking of your political rivals as people that deserve to be lynched outside their workplace.
Right. And for Trump, I mean, it was just like, whoa, people are responding to that. That must be, keep saying it.
And that's absolutely, I think that that's like the secret to like what, to the extent that he's going to have an influence on our politics, like I hope that he personally will go away. I don't know that we're going to be lucky enough for that, but like the thing that's going to be kept from his years is people noticing that. And like, not just in terms of the like backbench buttheads that just think their job is posting, you know, like there's a few of those and like, that's annoying, but like Marjorie Taylor Greene is not going to write a law that takes healthcare away from people. Like that's not what she sees her gig as being. She'd vote for it.
I gotta say though, I think we would need to reconvene in 15 years.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I worry all the time that I'm whistling past the graveyard with this. I mean, not just that she's going to be president, but like if that's really what politics is going to be now, is like trying to like cut wrestling promos and then just like fucking off to your office to raise money. Like that's grim. Like nothing happens then.
Well, I mean, I have to say that it goes slowly, but that's been the progression. I mean, like you and I could have had this conversation 15 years ago about like this state legislator in Indiana or that. And now we're talking about Congress people.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about the president of the United States. I mean, these guys don't go away. There does not seem, I mean, look, Marjorie Taylor Greene, how much money has she raised in the past 2 weeks? Millions at this point, and at least hundreds of thousands. And this is someone who's not even on a committee. She can't do anything.
I know. I mean, like she's basically there to post now. Like she's officially there to post.
There's nothing she can do. And yet there's all the incentive in the world for her to keep doing it. I mean, look at how long Sarah Palin glided after she quit her job as governor of like, that's it. The idea that you would quit your job as governor of Alaska because you can do more for the country as just
by appearing on TV, by going to like snowmobile conventions. Yeah.
Show like, it took like 3 or 4 years and God knows what other factors that basically took her out of the limelight. I mean, Donald Trump's ascension basically pushed her out a little bit, but people forget like she was filling those arenas for years after, through 2009, 2010, 2011, maybe up to 12. And
I think this is where the future kind of is for these people, is being like touring acts, like being like whatever the version of, there's like a version of Journey. And then there's also like Steve Perry playing Journey songs. And like, they try not to overlap on the circuit because like they can't stand each other. Like that's basically where all of this, I think, is heading. It's like this sort of like a purely theatrical performance of grievance, but like also the performance itself, like they're not playing like Wheel in the Sky. They're playing like we should do genocide against people, like, which is not great.
No, it's not great, because the problem is that to expand your metaphor, there is
the new Journey songs,
massive radio station or Spotify service that feeds off of these tours, and they just happen to also more often or not have a huge advantage in their ability to control the Senate or control the and that's the problem. There's a couple of these things I wanted to play